Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon everyone. My name is Putri Intan Oktapiani.
Hello, my name is Asri Luthfita.
Hello, my name is Selvia Putri.
Hello, my name is Tiara Salsabila.
Hello, I am Risma Dwi Aryanti.
Today we are from Group 3 going to present about factors affecting student silence in speaking class. Pay attention and listen carefully.
Definition of speaking is Andriana Putri, Amri, and Ahmad argue that speaking intends to hand over case, idea, concept, feelings to other in a definite, probable, intense, and precise way of spoken language. According to Tarigan and Budiarso Iwan explained the definition of speech as follows. Speaking is the ability to say sounds of articulation or words that express and convey thoughts, ideas, and feelings. Talking is a system of signs that can be heard and seen that uses several muscles and muscular tissue of the human body for the purpose of communicate ideas. From those theories above, it can be concluded that speaking skill is related to communication. Speaking is a skill to use a language appropriately to express someone's idea, opinions, or feelings, to give or get information and knowledge from other people who communicate. That is the aims of speaking. The first aim is to inform. To inform means that the speaker wants to inform and share the idea, information, process feelings or opinion to the hearer and give knowledge in a particular purpose. In this case, the speaker wants to inform about a fact. 2. To entertain. To entertain means that the speaker wants to make the hearer feels happy with the material, which is selected primarily based on their entertainment value. For example, when the teacher told a story to the student, the parent told the funny story to their children. By doing it, speaking will be more interesting to be heard by the listeners. And 3. To persuade. The persuade means that the speaker tries to convince the hearer to do something in a particular activity. The teacher has to make excellent teaching to the students by giving them an example in developing material. From the example, students can understand the mindset of the lesson and can be active in joining the lesson. The activities need the action to make the listener interested to perform the actions in which the speaker wants. 4. To discuss. To discuss means that the speaker wants to discuss something because the purpose of speaking is to make some decisions and planning. Discussion activity is believed to get more attention from the students because they have to solve a problem from the teacher's task. And the types of speaking. According to Brown and Herwanto, language teaching is devoted to instruction in mastering English conversation. He divided oral language into 2 types. First is monologue. The meaning of monologue is the oral language involves only one person in it. There is only one person who speaks, as in lectures, newscasting, radio broadcasts, and words were spoken emerge from the speaker's mind naturally and spontaneously. 2. There is dialogue. The meaning of dialogue is that the oral language involves 2 or more speakers. Based on the function, dialogue can be divided into 2 types, interpersonal and transactional. Interpersonal dialogue promotes social relationship. Meanwhile, transactional dialogue aims to convey proportional or factual information. For example, the teacher explains a material learning to her or his student.
The EFL students' problems in speaking class. One of the things that hinders speaking learning is student silence in speaking class. Student silence is a phenomenon that often occurs in speaking class where the students are not actively engaged in a speaking activity. Definitions of silence are greatly varied, depending on the theoretical framework. Most researchers interpret silence as face-saving, a difficulty avoidance strategy, or a silence request for help which is acceptable, tolerable, indeed productive if teachers are able to engage with students' nonverbal responses. That is because most students still have difficulty expressing their ideas using English as a foreign language. Perhaps because of their ignorance of vocabulary, lack of motivation, not interested in learning, and so on. Therefore, they prefer to be quiet when learning takes place. Another theory, according to Nakane 2002, who studies Japanese student silence in Australian universities, defines that the silence is constructed in part by their resistance against classroom participation. Some Japanese students actually do not like participating or asking questions in discussions. It is indicated that silence is a means of the inability of students to speak or express their thoughts and ideas in front of teachers and other students. According to Bahrain in the Hayu et al., reveals that silence is absence, obstructive or restrained perhaps as a result of disinterest, boredom, frustration, or strength. Moreover, Franklin said that silence has the following definitions. First, abstention from speech, sometimes concerning specific problems. Second, condition when nothing is heard. Third, mention or ignore notification. Based on the explanation above, it can be concluded that silence is a phenomenon faced by the teacher when in a speaking class. Therefore, it is interpreted as the absence of sound or interaction between students and teachers.
The result from research about the factors of student silence in speaking of 11 grad students at SMA Negeri 1 and SMA Negeri 2 Tembilahan Kota. Factors of student silence in speaking. First, psychological factor. There are 4 categories regarding the psychological factor causing student silence in speaking. That is lack of motivation, shyness, anxiety, lack of confidence, and fear of making mistakes. It is developed into 5 statements that were responded by the student and the mean of each statement. We can see in the table. Number 1, I am afraid of being laughed by my friends when I do some mistake in speaking. And the mean 2,9. Number 2, I'm nervous when I have to speak English in front of the whole class or being asked by the teacher that I choose to keep silent. The mean 2,7. Number 3, I get bored in learning English. The mean 2,1. Number 4, I think my English is bad so I'm not confident to speak. The mean 2,9. And number 5, I'm shy to state my opinion or answer my teacher's question even though I really want to. The mean 3,1. From the table above, we can conclude that the highest to the lowest is that shyness, students' lack of confidence and fear of making mistakes, and student anxiety. And the lowest is boredom. Students' boredom can be interpreted that they have low motivation in learning English, especially in speaking skill. Number 2, linguistic factor. There are 3 aspects of linguistic factors that make students silent in speaking activity. That is lack of vocabulary, lack of grammatical pattern, and incorrect pronunciation. They are developed into 5 statements and the mean score, and you can see in the table. Number 1, I don't understand what my teacher and my classmates talk about when they speak in English. The mean 2,7. Number 2, I use new words to add and develop my vocabulary in speaking. The mean 2,8. Number 3. I use synonym or describe the word that I don't know the English word. The mean 2,2. Number 4. I get difficult to pronounce English word. The mean 2,5. And the last, I can speak English with good grammar. And the mean 2,4. With the table above, we can conclude that the highest aspect to the lowest aspect is that lack of vocabulary, incorrect pronunciation, and the last, lack of grammatical pattern. Third, socio-cultural factor. There are two categories regarding socio-cultural factors causing student silence in speaking class. That is attitude towards the teacher and classroom condition. They are developed into 5 statements that has been responded by the student, and you can see in the table. The first statement, my teachers gave motivation not to be afraid speaking in English. The mean 1,2. Number 2, the teachers help me whenever I get difficult to answer question. The mean 1,3. Number 3, the teacher gives a compliment when I can answer a question or have performance. The mean 1,2. Number 4, my teachers use interesting media and technique in teaching speaking. The mean 1,5. And the last, my teacher gives a chance to all students to respond and answer her question. The mean 1,1. As presented in the table above, attitude towards the teacher nor the classroom condition become the main factor that cause students silent. All the mean score are under 2, which mean in low level. The students are good that their teachers always motivate them, help them whenever they are in difficulty answering the teacher's question, compliment them, use interesting technique and media, and give all students a chance to participate in a speaking activity. It means that they have a good attitude toward the teachers for the teaching learning process they have experienced it in the classroom. The result of the student response on socio-cultural factors in line with the teacher's answer. There is no one of the teachers state that the classroom condition affects their students' low speaking performance.
So now it's time for me to explain the teacher's effort to overcome silence in speaking class. Teacher's efforts to cope with student silence and speaking after analyzing the open-ended items. Using thematic analysis, the teacher's answer sorted into 3 themes. Those are applying various teaching strategies and techniques, using teaching media, as well as personal approach. Now let's talk about the first theme, that is applying various teaching strategies and techniques. According to the questionnaire has been responded by the teachers, the effort that they do to cope with student silence are implementing various strategies and techniques in teaching, such as role play, group discussion, elicitation technique, peer teaching, presentation, and vocabulary games are the most often they implemented in teaching speaking. Furthermore, a teacher clearly wrote her stage in teaching. In the stage 1, teaching a kind of conversation. In the stage 2, teaching the pronunciation repeatedly. In the stage 3, listen the native speakers. And in this stage, they have to make students familiar practically with English. Students need to presume English is not such a strange or foreign language and have to treat English as their own language. And in the last stage, student makes a new conversation of the material that their teacher have taught before. And teacher asks students to practice as if they are a native speaker by expressing as free as they can. They should enjoy dramatically when speaking in English. With those strategies, every teacher had their special own technique to break students' silence and motivate them. They were singing a song, telling jokes, giving them more time to do the assignment, not judging their mistake, and giving rewards or compliments to the students for even their little step of achievement. Let's move into the second theme. It is using the teaching media. Teacher also use teaching media to help students' problem in speaking. The use of media can decrease student boredom in learning. All the teachers use the audio-visual media to attract students' attention. The video display a conversation of animation character or real dialogue of native speaker. The students got authentic material pronunciation as was said by one of the teachers that by listening to Western music or watching Western movies, they can learn pronunciation and add the stock of vocabulary. And the last them is personal approach. Some teacher approach the students personally, being like a friend or guide them personally, such as coming to students' table and asking the difficulty they face. Also motivate the students. Lecture efforts to motivate the students to not be keep silent. Every lecturer has responsibility to enhance student academic ability and shape their character, especially enlarge their knowledge. In addition, a lecturer should help students to increase their self-confidence and set up their positive learning attitudes in speaking class. Some site in Zacharias 2014 assert that to make the students speak in the class is the learners are pushed to use the target language in productive tasks. However, every student should also hard work to achieve their goals. In this case, they should have higher motivation in order to increase their self-confidence. She also emphasized that students should frequently practice to speak, learn new vocabulary in order they can become accustomed to speak. Finally, their problem in speaking can be overcome so they may not keep silent in the class.
The next part of our presentation is discussion. I will lead you to discussion about the factors affecting the phenomenon. Student silence is a phenomenon that often occurs in speaking class, where the students are not actively engaged in speaking activity. Definitions of silence are greatly varied depending on the theoretical framework. But most researchers interpreted silence as face-saving, a difficulty avoidance strategy, or a silent request for help which is acceptable, tolerable, and productive if teachers are able to engage with students' nonverbal responses. As per Nugroho in 2017, that there are 3 factors affecting the students to be silent in speaking class. The 3 factors are including psychological factors, linguistic factors, and socio-cultural factors. The first one is psychological factor. Students are concerned about their lack of proficiency and are fearful of making mistakes. This leads to a lack of confidence in their ability and discourages them from interacting orally. Students who feel inadequate in their language abilities tend to protect their self-image by not participating in class communication. Some psychological factors are lack of motivation, shyness, anxiety, lack of confidence, and fear of making mistakes. All of you might have known about the psychological issues mentioned before. Me, as the speaker, also have felt the situation once we exposed to a situation that forced us to speak up. It is really triggering our anxiety and self-confidence. As you can see on your screen, those are the answers from the respondent about psychological issues in speaking. The most appear answer is deal with self-confidence, afraid being left by their friends, and nervous. And according to Horwitz in 1986, in general, educators have 2 options when dealing with anxious students. The first one is they can help students learn to cope with the existing anxiety-provoking situation. Or the second one, they can make the learning context less stressful. However, what is the most important is that the teacher must first acknowledge the existence of foreign language anxiety in the classroom before attributing a student's poor language performance to a lack of ability, inadequate background, or poor motivation. The second one is a linguistic factor. The linguistic factors affecting students' silence in speaking activities are lack of vocabulary, lack of understanding grammatical pattern, and incorrect pronunciation. Those aspects, as mentioned before, are 3 of 5 indicators of speaking skills. Lack of vocabulary knowledge could lead to students' difficulties in language reception and production and becomes an obstacle for them to express their ideas in English. And grammar provides students with the structure they need in order to organize and put their message and ideas across. And the next is incorrect pronunciation can cause the students to be poorly perceived and understood by others. In learning activities, for example, some students tend to be silent because they are confused. They are confused about representing their thoughts in English. Linguistic factors is one of the causes. I will briefly review. Generally, the structures of English grammar is much different from Indonesian grammar. When we use ibu pergi ke pasar, it is the same as saya pergi ke pasar. While English uses mother goes to the market and I go to the market. There's no article as or es in Indonesian. While the students want to practice in speaking, they tend to think about the grammar first. Then it makes them quiet for so long to think about the linguistic aspect. And the last factors is socio-cultural factors. It deals with attitudes towards the teacher and classroom conditions. And the teacher is very important in motivating the students and helping them to be confident for speaking the target language in case English skill. And in teaching and learning process, the students also needs classroom conditions which gives them a pleasant situation.
And the last, conclusion. In conclusion, there are 2 final results. First, psychological problems are the dominant factor that mostly makes students perform passively in speaking activity with percentage 42%. Linguistic factor with percentage 39%, and socio-cultural factor that deals with teacher and classroom situation is the last factor with very small percentage, that is 19%. The second is the teacher's efforts to cope with student silence are implementing various strategies and teaching techniques using audiovisual media and personal approach to help students' difficulties in speaking. One of the results that becomes a great concern to the factors causing student silence in the speaking class is shyness, which is included in the psychological factor. This aspect affects 4 other aspects, namely lack of confidence, anxiety, lack of motivation, and fear of making mistakes or afraid of making mistakes and having low motivation. So, it can specifically be made the focus of further research in an effort to deal with the shy character of the student.
Alright, let's end today's presentation with a quote from Francis Bacon that says, "Knowledge is power." So, don't be afraid if you don't know anything and ask anything you don't know. Alright, that brings us to the end of this presentation. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.